Hi, beautiful. I know a lot of us out here are, well, at our breaking points, which means a lot of at-home haircuts, at-home hair color, a lot of hair disasters. Everybody wants to do something drastic to their hair right now in order to just feel something. And I get it. Over the years, I've watched so many hair color bleach fail videos. I've learned a lot actually on what people are doing at home that is making their hair look so bad. So that knowledge is gonna help me today bring you guys the basic knowledge of how to properly color your hair yourself at home. I'm gonna debunk all this sort of myths. I'm gonna tell you what things people are doing right, what things people are doing wrong, and make sure it doesn't fall off. We'll go over everything from bleaching, toning, to aftercare, and so much more. However, I will be going over the basics. If I have hairdressers watching, if I have anybody who's sort of advanced in the world of hair color, this may be a bit too basic for you. But for the average person, you've come to the right place. And just as a little reminder, this does not replace a professional hairdresser. Somebody who has studied color theory for years is gonna know a lot more than this, but it is a guide during these tough times on how you can color your hair yourself and do it well. Maybe not amazing, but well, I hope. And with that all said, you guys, let's learn some color theory. Let's do it. Are you ready? Get out your notepad or your phone and a pen or your finger and start taking notes, all right? Because we're gonna go over a lot here and it is important that you listen. Listen to me. This will be like a fun class. I'm like a cool teacher, you know? I'm like not like the rest of them. First, we're gonna go over how to prepare your hair for hair coloring, otherwise known as the category prepare. Don't wash your hair before coloring it. What you do when you wash your hair is you make tiny little abrasions on your scalp. This is going to make coloring your hair very painful. If you're using bleach, that bleach is going to seep into those little tiny cracks in your scalp and it is going to sizzle and burn. So please don't wash your hair before coloring it. It is okay if there's product in your hair. It's honestly fine. It's really not a big deal. The bleach will seep through everything, okay? Bleach is super duper heavy duty and it'll go through a little bit of, you know, hairspray and it'll get to the cortex of your hair. It's not a big deal. Please don't wash your hair. And also, maybe if you're gonna bleach it, don't wash it for several days. That way you have a good amount of oil secretion on your scalp to protect your scalp. Don't wash your damn hair. This is pretty basic, but make sure you cover your space. Cover your floor, cover your counters, cover yourself, wear some old clothes. Brush out your hair. Please don't try and color your hair with a bunch of tangles in it. Get all those tangles out before going in with that color, or else you're gonna have weird spotting from the tangles. If your hair is like matted or anything in the back, you're gonna end up coloring those matted pieces and then you're gonna get all spotting everywhere. It's not good. Brush your damn heads. You're gonna also wanna separate your hair into 4 sections. Here, I'll show you on Miss Mannequin just how you do that. This is a super basic sectioning method that every hairstylist uses on the daily. Super easy. Part your hair in the middle, all the way back, down to the nape of your neck. That's your first section. Those are your 2. And then go to the apex. You can find the apex by laying the comb on your head and finding the highest point of your head. That is what you call the apex. Then make a section from the apex to behind the ear, and those are your 4 sections. There it is, voila. You're gonna wanna make sure your hair is dry. Don't apply color on wet hair, unless you're trying to do like a bleach bath, but that's another advanced thing, okay? We don't need to know about that today. Apply color to dry hair. Please don't put bleach on wet hair. It doesn't really make any sense. It's just gonna dilute your formula. There's really no point, all right? Make sure your hair's dry. I also see a lot of people soaking their hair in excessive amounts of, say, coconut oil. There's really no point of soaking your hair in coconut oil. The bleach is just gonna eat through it all and it's not gonna matter that you have that oil on your hair strands. It's not. Get rid of the oil. It's not necessary. It just makes a mess and your hair just feels nasty and like really gross and greasy after. You're welcome. All right, let's move on to category 2, how to mix. Mixing your bleach or your color. You gotta do that properly, all right? This is a big factor. Guess what, you guys? Different developers actually do different things. It's not a one size fits all. I know a lot of people think that there's 10, 20, 30, and 40 volume for literally no reason, and they just kind of take their guess on what they should use, but actually, there is a method to the madness, I promise. So let me just go over the very basics of what each different developer does differently. So we're gonna talk mostly today about two different categories. You can either be doing a permanent color, which is not bleach, and bleach is bleach, right? So anything that doesn't have that white powder involved, that's just color, that's permanent color. With the white powder, that's bleach. And then we'll also talk about toners later, but just for now, just know the differences between color and bleach. Let's go over color first. So if you're coloring your hair, that means you're not using any of that white powder stuff. You have an option to use 10, 20, 30, or 40 volume. If you're using 10 volume, you're probably somebody who has any hair color and they're trying to go darker. Because when you're using 10 volume, you're not gonna get any lightening effects. So it's just gonna deposit tone onto your hair permanently, but it's not gonna cover any grays. Now, if you have grays and you have any hair color and you're trying to go darker and you're trying to also cover your grays, you're gonna use 20 volume. It lifts, it gets into the cortex of those grays and actually changes the color of your gray hair and all of your hair on your head, and it lays there permanently. So 20 volume is great for you. Now, 30 and 40 volume with permanent color, not bleach, is typically used for high lift color, which means maybe you are a natural. This is important. If you have color on your hair, you cannot lift your hair color with more color. So that means if you have a dark brown hair and it's box dyed like that, you can't then use a blonde box dye to lighten your hair. You must use bleach. Just want to get that very clear. You must use bleach to get your hair lighter if it's already colored. But if your hair is natural, if it is naturally brown and you've never colored it, you can use a blonde dye to make your hair blonde. Now, it might come out a little bit orange. You can also use bleach, but you can also use a high lift color, which is a color that lifts many levels. So you're gonna wanna use a 30 or 40 volume with that in order to get maximum lift with your blonde color. Another thing that I would use 30 or 40 volume for is reds. You can use 30 volume if you're trying to get that very maxed out, like bright red, or 40 volume if you really want to push it to the max and get like fuchsia going on in your head. You can do that with permanent color without bleach if your hair has never been colored before. Now, for those of you who are going to use bleach, so people who have already colored hair who want to go lighter, or people who have never colored their hair before and want to get to that max bright platinum blonde, you're going to want to use lightener, aka bleach, that powder white stuff that you mix with developer, okay? Now, we don't use 10 volume with bleach because it has no lifting capabilities. Again, 10 volume just deposits and doesn't lift. When I say lift, I mean like the hair cuticle doesn't actually open. That's what's lifting. And then the color molecules actually go inside. 10 volume, it doesn't do that. It lays pretty much on top, slightly inside. Now, 20 volume is for those of you looking for about 1 to 2 levels of lift. If you're highlighting your hair, this is often a great developer to use for highlights. Otherwise, 30 volume is pretty much my standard. I pretty much use 30 volume on everybody in any lightening scenario. It's pretty much my go-to, and I highly recommend if you're gonna lighten your hair at any capacity, use a 30 volume. Unless your hair is already like pretty light and you're only trying to go a little bit lighter, 20 volume will work just fine. Now, 40 volume, I just say, I don't feel like it does that much more than 30 volume, to be honest with you. I feel like it lightens very fast and then dies out very fast. So I don't really recommend it to anybody. I don't ever use it for pretty much anything. I'm not a huge fan of 40 volume. And if you're using 40 volume on your scalp, it's probably gonna burn a lot and I would not recommend it. You actually shouldn't really be using 30 volume on your scalp either, but I never really found any problem with it and it's always been fine. So 30 volume is pretty much the standard. I highly recommend that with lightener if you're trying to lighten your hair. Especially those of you with virgin hair who are trying to lighten your hair for the first time, 30 volume will work great. And if you're asking, well, Brad, what kind of bleach should I be using? I mean, it's all quite similar. Look for a nice one wherever you're shopping or online, or I don't know, wherever you can get lightener at this point. I'm sure it'll be fine. I haven't found a gigantic difference between the different lighteners I've used over the past. If you have the right technique, you can use any kind of lightener and you'll get a great result. And also, one last thing, please read the directions. Every lightener has a different mixing ratio. They're very similar across the board, but please mix your lightener correctly to what the directions say. It is important to mix correctly That way you get the maximum results from the lightener you're using. Let's go over our next category, which is where to start. We've mixed our color. We prepared our at-home salon and our hair, and now we're ready to actually apply the color. So let's go over permanent color first. This is the stuff that's not bleach. If you have virgin hair and you're trying to do an all-over color, please start at the midsections and ends, and then later, after you're done with that, apply the root color. Because you have heat from your scalp, I say this all the time, you will get what's called hot roots, which is when your root area develops more than your mids and ends, and you end up with a sort of orangey warm color up there because of the heat from your scalp. So please, if you don't want orange roots, don't start with your roots. So it's very similar with lightener. Don't start your roots if you have virgin hair. Please don't, or else your roots will end up white and your ends will end up like a yellow orange. I would recommend probably just doing the mid lengths and ends first, and then wait about 10 to 15 minutes until your hair has started to develop and your hair has started to lighten, and then go and hit your roots with the lightener at the end. If you have pre-existing color, and this is not your first time coloring your hair, say you have very dark box dye color on your hair or just any dark color, start off with the parts that are the darkest. So if you have spots all around, start off in those spots that are the darkest, then move your way up. Still, don't do your roots first. Unless you're doing like a retouch on existing hair, don't start on your roots. Next, we have application method. This is where your work either turns into a masterpiece or a disaster. This is actually one of the most important parts, if not the most important part. Now listen, I understand that none of you are gonna use a brush. Probably none of you, which is fine. Honestly, it's fine. As long as you're using these things correctly, you'll be fine. I swear, you'll be all good to go. First of all, make sure you have gloves on. It's really not good for your hands to put color all over them. For real, it'll dry them out forever.